The Bengals dished out plenty of cash at defensive tackle to start free agency, but it does leave me with some questions about a couple of guys they drafted last year. So in this video, I'll explain what's in store for both of them as they enter their second years. Hi again, Bengals fans. Who's got two thumbs and foolishly predicted that the first move the Bengals would make in free agency would be to sign a guard? This guy. But if I were to predict the first external signing that this team makes when legal tampering opens, I'm going to put my money on the guard spot. Oops. Not the first time I've whiffed. Definitely not going to be the last time. But let's focus on what the Bengals actually did in the first day of free agency. One of the things I did foresee the Bengals doing was trying to identify value along the defensive line in free agency. And I think that's what they did when they extended both BJ Hill and Joseph Ossai, and then they went out and got TJ Slaton. Because Hill's 3-year, $33 million deal is relatively cheap compared to the deal that he signed 3 years ago when the salary cap was significantly smaller than what it is now. So technically it is a raise on paper, but relative to cap inflation, it's not. And Slaton got his first veteran contract after being drafted in 2021. He got $15 million over the course of 2 years, which is probably going to end up being a 1-year deal with a team option next year in 2026. And then you have Joseph Ossai, who is represented by none other than David Mulugeta, the agent that the Bengals refused to work with for the past 4 years when he represented both Jesse Bates and T. Higgins. So he got a nice $7 million prove-it deal for just this season, and he's going to be inserted back into their rotation along the edge. I think when looking at all three of these deals separately in a vacuum, they make sense. None of them were particularly overpays. Slaton is the only new guy here, but he has history with defensive line coach Jerry Montgomery, who coached him in Green Bay, and arguably those were his best years when he was playing under Montgomery, so that makes sense as well. But as far as Hill and Slaton go, if you're paying them to be starters, and they are your two starters on the field at the same time as your two defensive tackles, neither one of them is giving you any sort of juice as a pass rusher. Like, if there is a surprise with how the Bengals spent along the defensive line, it's the fact that they haven't added any new pass rushers to the equation. And I recognize that both Duke Tobin and Montgomery both made a point of emphasis at the scouting combine last month about improving the run defense and how improving in that regard can help out the pass rush because it gets you into more obvious passing situations if you're able to stop the run. But at the end of the day, if you don't have pass rushers on the field, it's very hard for you to actually rush the passer. And this is on track to be an issue regardless if Trey Hendrickson is on the team next year. Yes, Ossai and Myles Murphy playing a little bit more on the opposite edge can definitely help there, but at defensive tackle, who is winning a one-on-one right now? Obviously, there is a need to add a pass rushing defensive tackle in the draft next month, and I think that's going to be a priority, but there's a good chance that whichever defensive tackle they draft next month, he can still be the 5th defensive tackle in this rotation, which is why my biggest takeaway from these signings is that one of Chris Jenkins Jr. or McKinley Jackson is expected to take a monumental leap as a pass rusher next year. And to be quite honest, that's a bit scary to contemplate because I don't think you ever want to be in the business of expecting a player to be something that he's never been before. And I'm not saying that either Jenkins or Jackson are bad players, but neither one of them were dominant pass rushers coming out of college, and neither one of them flashed enough as rookies last year to indicate that that's something that's obtainable in 2025. But just think about this logically. I mean, the Bengals put their money where their mouth is by making sure they have guys that can hold up against the run because they didn't have a nose tackle last year. That was a bet that they made when they let DJ Reader walk out the door for the Detroit Lions, and they paid the price for it. And to be fair to both Jenkins and Jackson, neither one of them are nose tackles, right? That's not what they're going to do. That's not how they're going to win in the NFL. They can't hold up to double teams. But instead of relying on one of them to maybe become the next BJ Hill, they just brought back BJ Hill for another 2 to 3 years. Hill and Slaton pretty much are who they are at this point. Hill is going to be 30 years old this year. He's not quite the pass rusher that he used to be when he first joined the Bengals a few years ago, but he can still get you some wins here and there. And Slaton is just a nose tackle. Yes, he's younger, but he's not going to be a dominant pass rusher ever. Until the Bengals make a notable investment in a proven pass rushing defensive tackle, whether that is in free agency, which again is very unlikely at this juncture, or maybe with a first and second round pick, it's up to Jenkins and Jackins to be that guy. And all I'm saying is, it's kind of risky right now, but this is just the tip of the iceberg as we have so much more to cover with Bengals free agency, and we will cover all of it right here on A to Z Sports Cincinnati.